Good, whatever time of day it is for you. Currently, right now, it is a good morning for me. The birds are outside. It's really great, and I'm excited to be here to bring you week 3 of July for our faith lessons. Now, for the past 2 months, we have been talking about faith, which, do you remember what faith is? I'll get it started for you. Faith is trusting in what you can't see. Right. Faith is trusting in what you can't see because of what you can see. And we've been learning all about that through the early church and the disciples and the followers of Jesus. And that's not any different from today because we are learning more about Paul and about his faith saved not only his life, but 276 people. No joke. It's a crazy story and I'm so excited to get into it. But first, as always, we have our question for the day, which is, what is a big problem that you have faced in your life? Now, we all face problems. For example, right now there's a pandemic, which means that there is a virus that's going around the world and making people sick. That's a big problem, especially because we don't want people getting sick. And as a result, we have to stay home a lot more, which is not fun either. So that's a big problem. But there are also problems before coronavirus. Can you believe that there are problems before everything we're facing? It seems crazy, but it's true. So I want you to think really hard about a big problem that you faced. If you're with your family, talk about it with them. If you're in service, write it on the icebreaker sheet. Have fun, draw it out, do what you want. Come right back. Wow. I mean, I couldn't literally hear them, but I can imagine you guys have some really big problems because we all do, because life is filled with problems. But today's lesson is all about how knowing Jesus changes the way that you see your problems. That's our bottom line for today, because we have a guarantee that in life we're going to go through stuff and it's not always going to be fun. But with Jesus, it can change our whole perspective and the way that we see things. So instead of something being the worst, it can be like, okay, Jesus, I see what you're doing here and I'm going to trust you. And there's no better way to illustrate that than through our friend Paul. So without further ado, let's get in today's word for the day.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. And now for an amazing story.
All right, Paul. Last time we checked in with him, right, he was in Athens and he was with the thinkers, the people who just sit around all day thinking, what concepts could we talk about that we haven't mused about before? I mean, those people, right? And they heard him speaking and they were like, who is this God that you're talking about? We have thousands. We've never heard of him. And that's when Paul was like, you do. It's the unknown God. He's the creator. And it was this amazing opportunity to share. Some people laughed, but he did get some people who follow Jesus. And that's always what's important. That was Paul's mission in everything. So again, Paul does what he does. He keeps preaching the word. It's always so crazy to remember that Paul used to hate people who did this. He used to punish them. He would put them in jail. He would hurt them. He would also make fun of them. But that's the power of God in your life, because that wasn't his life anymore. And he dedicated all of it, and it wasn't an easy life. We talked about how he'd been chased out of places. He was always on the run, going from place to place preaching, but still having to avoid other people who wanted to kill him. And that's really no different than his current experience in our story today. So to help, we're going to track Paul's progress as he goes through this journey. Now, please, I'm not very good at wiping things down, and I was painting, so this is why it's a little dirty. But our story starts in Jerusalem, where Paul was arrested, unfortunately. But while he was there and in jail, a group of people naturally wanted to kill him, so they ended up taking him to Caesarea to see the governor there, thinking that that would be a nice, safer place. Now, from there, they're like, well, you actually need to go to Rome. You're a Roman citizen. You need to go before Caesar with these claims, right? So cool. Paul is going to go to Rome, which is like the capital of the world at this time. And he's going to go before Caesar which is a pretty top dog in this world. But, you don't just go to Rome in these times. You don't hop on a plane, so it's a journey. So he ends up getting on a boat. We'll put the boat right there. On a boat with a guy named Julius. And now there's other prisoners on the boat. There's guards, things like that. Like I said, remember that number? 276 people on, well, not this boat, but on a boat. So they get on the boat from Caesarea and they stop in a place called Sidon. Oh, well, I guess that's, okay, so we're delaying Rome a little bit because we're going to stop in Sidon. And then here, Julius actually let Paul visit some of his friends, which was really nice, and it was a great way to get off the ship and see some people, especially as, he's arrested, he's in a lot of trouble, but Julius was really nice. We got to do that. So then they keep going on with their journey, and eventually they have to change ships, which isn't uncommon. They had to pick up one from Egypt that was carrying grain. They sailed around Cyprus to do it, so we're going to see here that they had to stop and, okay, well, I guess that's going to delay the Rome trip a little bit more. We're still trying to get to Rome. So then they do this. Great. Okay, so now, if you were Paul, you're on this journey. Travel for Caesar is your end destination. But there's a lot going on and a lot of things that could happen in this time. But we can actually go back to the Bible and see a promise that Paul had throughout this entire journey. And we're going to be back in the book of Acts, which is where we've been most of this month. And we see in Acts chapter 23, while he was first arrested, that the Lord appeared to Paul and said, "Be encouraged, Paul. Just as you have been a witness to me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome as well." Okay, right. So he's in Jerusalem. Automatically he knows he's going to Rome. But he has this promise in there. He is going to Rome. There's not you're going to end up somewhere. God is telling him where he's going. So even though his journey is pretty convoluted, well, it takes a while to get there, he knows that that's eventually where he's going. So they continue. Here we go. But then they start to face some bad weather. And they're going to stop. They're in a place called Fair Havens on the island of Crete. And Paul says to them, this is really hard. I need more hands, guys. I need to be like an octopus. Here we go. Paul says in Acts 27, verse 10, "Men," he said, "I believe that there is trouble ahead if we go on. Shipwreck, loss of cargo, and a danger to our lives as well." Well, given the changing weather where they were at, the crew didn't necessarily disagree, but they wanted to get to a place called Phoenix where they thought they would be safer for the winter. So while they're in Fair Havens, still on our way to Rome, a wind picks up. And it's a gentle breeze at first. So the ship is just lulling. And they think, maybe it's fine. This is a good time to leave. We need to get to Phoenix before it gets worse. So the boat's going, right? It's going. The weather starts to get worse. So instead of this gentle, it's like a hurricane. And the ship is just crazy. And the people on board are understandably nervous because, first of all, they're sailors. So they understand the conditions. And when it gets really bad, they know what can happen, which is a shipwreck, which is horrible. What's the one thing you don't want to do with your ship? Wreck it. So they're aware of the possibility. They're freaking out. But again, we see that an angel of the Lord comes to Paul. It says, "Do not be afraid, Paul, for you will surely stand trial before Caesar. What's more, God in his goodness has granted safety to everyone sailing with you." So Paul already knew he was going to Rome. So even though everyone else is on the ship and probably losing their minds in fear because the ship is just going crazy, Paul knew from here that he was going to Rome. And then he got this promise that it wasn't just him that was going to get there safely, but was everyone on board, all 276 people. So that probably gave him some confidence, and that's what Paul was trying to do for the crew and everyone else because they were a little scared. And then he continued, though. "So take courage, for I believe God." He had faith. He couldn't see how it was going to work out, but he trusted because he knew his God. "It will be just as he said, but we will be shipwrecked on an island." Cool, Paul. Thanks. So Paul is giving them comfort. Like, we're gonna live. It's fine. Like, don't even worry about this storm. Like, it's going to be okay. And they're probably like, oh, like, I don't know this God, but maybe. And then he delivers the news that they're going to be shipwrecked, which is probably more concerning. But so be it. Whether they believed him or not, they kept going. For 14 days they were in this storm. 14 days. Now, like, I've been on boats before, and when you hit a little bit of a wave, you're not super scared, but you're also like, yeah, I'm not enjoying this at all. But like 14 days of high winds, crazy waves, pretty sure you're gonna die. Like, that's a lot for anyone to deal with. But on the dawn of that 14th day, they saw land, which was amazing. But they were really worried about the ship hitting rocks, so they're like, let's get into the lifeboat. Let's just abandon the ship right now. Let's not get it too close. We don't want to risk it. But Paul reminded them, no, we have to stay on the ship. This is what we are called to do, is to stay on the ship. And he tried to encourage them further. In 27, starting in verse 33, we see, just as the day was dawning, Paul urged everyone to eat. You have been so worried that you haven't touched food for 2 weeks. So, like, not only are you on a ship that's, like, in a crazy storm for 2 weeks, you're not eating. I feel like you would be really hungry, really tired, and really cranky at this point. I mean, I know I would. I get real hangry, like real hangry. Please eat something now for your own good, for not a hair of your heads will perish. Then he took some bread, gave thanks to God before them all, and then broke off a piece and ate it. And then everyone was encouraged and began to eat. So right in this moment, Paul's encouraging them. And then they have an unexplainable peace. They eat. And they know that things are still not perfect, but they eat. And I think that's an amazing moment of how the crew had begun to view Paul throughout all of this. I mean, he was just a prisoner on board, but Julius supported him and everyone listened to him. But unfortunately, just like always, somebody wanted to kill Paul. But this time, it wasn't just because he was Paul necessarily. It was because he was a prisoner. And the guards who were with the prisoners wanted to kill them all because they're like, well, they're going to just escape and swim to safety. And that's not really helpful for us because, like, our job is to deliver them. But Julius, remember the guy on the boat, was like, no, do not kill him. He liked Paul. He knew that that was a bad plan. And I mean, also, Paul had promised they would all live. And he didn't say people would escape. And probably Julius was like, no, it's going to be fine. Just chill. So the boat gets closer and it hits something called a sandbar. Now, when it hits a sandbar, it does begin to break up a little bit, which is, a little scary. Oh no, my ship is breaking. Oh no, catastrophic failure. But they were close enough to the island that they were able to all swim and get to shore safely. So even though they hit the sandbar and they had some problems, they were all able to arrive where they were, well, not where they're going, because we're still trying to get to Rome. But they got to the island of Malta, which is just another stepping stone. So on the island of Malta, they build a fire for everybody to welcome them and help them dry off. Obviously, they had been in a storm. It had been a scary couple of weeks. They're helping them out. And Paul is also gathering sticks for the fire when in the bundle of sticks, out pops a snake. And like, this isn't just like a rat snake or like a black snake. You're not super concerned. Like, this was a snake that the locals from Malta saw and were like, oh no, this dude is dead. Like, they were just literally waiting for him to die because it got onto his hand and it like was just there. I'm like, oh great, well he's this is it. Cool, bye Paul. But Paul was able to shake the snake off and then he didn't die. And people were like, yo, this dude is a god. And he's like, no, that's not who I am. But he ended up going to the chief of the island's house, healed that guy's father, and then while he was there, healed all the sick people on the island, which is crazy. So he's gone through all of this. Like, he started here, his goal is to get here, and there's just been stops forever in between. But while he's here, he ends up healing people. And then they, in return, the people of Malta, help the crew put the ship together and get it ready and get them supplies and help them head on their way. Now, I don't know if my ship will necessarily go back together because I really ripped it. I honestly don't even know where the sticky stuff is. cool. There we go. Let's pretend. So there's my boat ready to go back to Rome. You can't even see because it's tilting. All right, so they helped them, and eventually they left. And Paul, after like all of this, snake bites, shipwrecks, stops, just the works of a journey, you could say, he makes it to Rome, where for 2 years he gets to stay in his own apartment there. He had a place and he got to stay there and actually got to welcome visitors and got to see people, and his friends actually met him there. And he continued to spread the word to Jews and Gentiles both. So it was pretty amazing that despite everything he went through, he still trusted God, he had faith in the promise, and he continued to spread the word, which is all about, again, our bottom line is knowing Jesus changes the way you see your problems. So being on a shipwreck is scary, but Paul had the promise and he had the confidence in God. I mean, even if he didn't have that exclusive, that promise, even if God hadn't said, you're going to make it, Paul still would have stood firm in his faith no matter what happened, because that's what faith gives us. It's the confidence in all that we do. Even when we don't know how it's going to work out, we know that God's got it, which is an amazing thing. And when you have that faith, when you trust in Jesus to take care of you, you can face so many problems, probably all of your problems, because you know, hey, Jesus is here. It's not just me. I'm not trying to figure this out on my own. Like, I have Jesus, and that is an amazing thing. All right, everyone, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today and talking about Paul's story and about how knowing Jesus changes the way we see our problems. See, God, like I said before, we're going to have problems. We're going to face things that are hard for us. But we know with you, we have that confidence in how it's going to work out. God, and I'm so thankful for that. And I'm so thankful in how you care for us and how you take care of us, God. And as we go throughout our weeks, as we face these problems, as we see the things in our world, we can remember that you are in charge and we have faith in you and that you can help us shift the way we see things, God. And again, I pray for the world. I pray for what's going on with the pandemic. I pray for all of these things, God, and I pray that your hand is in here for everyone. In your name I pray, amen. Awesome. So the activity packet, as always, if you're in service, you can download it using the link in the description. If you want it mailed to you, let me know. All sorts of fun activities, including this week's faith log, which is, what problem will I see differently this week? So even if you aren't necessarily getting the whole faith log, this is something really good. Parents, talk about it with your kids. Kids, write about it. Just think about, with Jesus, what problem will you see differently? Any problem that comes up in your life. Like, it doesn't need to be something big and huge and earth-shattering. Just, if there's a problem like, I really want to do this, but I have to do this. How can Jesus help you see that differently? Because Jesus is there for everything. The big things, the little things. He's not just here for like the big guns. He's here for every moment that you need him, which is literally every single moment. All right, guys, it's been a lot of fun. I'm going to see you next week or in 2 minutes or whatever kind of span you're watching this. All right, everyone. Goodbye.